You're either born with the blues or you're not. Wait, no. So that's what some people say about the blues. Either you're born with it and you've got it, or you don't, and you can never learn it. And I just couldn't disagree more. No surprise there, right? I teach blues guitar, but it's really true. I believe that the blues is open to all of us, and I believe that there's a spot for your voice on the guitar in the blues. And in this video, I'm going to teach you a couple of things to help you sound more bluesy. Alright, so this really came about from an email exchange that I had with a premium member named George Packham. Thanks, George. George was asking, how do I make my licks sound bluesy over the 5-chord and the 4-chord of a 12-bar blues progression? But it's really a bigger question than that, and it's how do I make my licks sound bluesy? How do I sound bluesy when I play? And there are a couple of things that we're going to cover here, and the first of which I believe is really important, is choosing the right notes. So you can play from a scale, but some notes don't necessarily sound super bluesy. They don't have that raw tension that really gives us what we would think about as a bluesy sound. So let's start to illustrate what you can do to get that bluesy sound. And we're going to work from the key of A. Like I said, we're going to do the 5-4 chord move, so we can skip all the way to the last 4 bars of a 12-bar blues progression. And the 5 chord would be E. I'm going to play an E7 here, and then a D7 is the 4 chord, and our 1, and then finally we'll wrap up with the 5 chord again. It's a real typical turnaround in the last 4 bars. And what we're going to do is really pay attention to the chord we're on as we apply the scale. So let's talk about the scale. We're coming from the key of A, and in the pentatonic blender course, I really talk about picking a scale as a frame of reference and then borrowing some outside tones. And so I want to pick, just for the sake of this lesson and this illustration, let's pick the A major pentatonic scale. Really has a real bright sound, but watch, we can still get some cool gritty notes out of this when we blend in outside tones, and even from the scale itself when used over the right chord. So here's this in action. We're going to play the 5 chord, and this is the lick that happens over the 5 chord. Okay, so what we're doing there sounds really cool and definitely bluesy over our E7 chord. And there's one big note that we're really calling out to make this sound nice and bluesy, and it's this D note here on the 10th fret of the 1st string. So what we're doing, we're putting a little blues bend on that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But that note choice is really important because it is outside of that home scale that we were just talking about, the A major pentatonic. There's no D in there. There is a D in the minor pentatonic scale right there. And what we're going to do is borrow that D from the minor pentatonic scale. And it works great because that D is the flat 7 of an E7 chord. It really gives the E7 its entire sound, that dominant sound, playing the D. So when we play that, we're really emphasizing that tension that's just built in to this chord. And you don't want to just stay on it and just play that, so we're going to color things around it a little bit. And this is where we're really blurring some pentatonic ideas. Right off the start, we're doing something more in the major pentatonic realm. Then walking back down from this minor third here, and we've got that sort of sweet note right here. The major second of this, coming from the key of A, is B, and that B is in the major pentatonic scale for A, and it's also a sweet tone to play over E because it's in an E7. It's a B right here. In a lower octave, of course, but that B is there, so it sounds really sweet when we use that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is move this into the D7 chord. And you've already heard the first part of it. It was really the ending of the other, where we're just kind of sticking that big A note. That works. That sounds really good over this D7 chord because the A is the fifth. That's a real strong relationship to this chord. And so we're going to do that. And then this is it's a subtle and sweet move right here. We kind of play with the notes out of the A minor pentatonic scale, but we come back to this note. Now this is the major 6. It's an F sharp, and it shows up in your D7 chord. So when you hit it, it's a real sweet match, and it sounds real nice and bluesy. And then we're just going to finish this phrase, and we're moving into the A at this point. Just do a little tag ending there over A. The real point is what we're doing over the E chord and what we're doing over our D7 chord. I think when you have note choice down, you're well on your way, but that's just one part of it. To me, you got to know how to play with feeling, and that's the second big area that you're going to want to start bringing in to your blues playing to sound really bluesy. And what does that really mean? Honestly, it was something that when I first started trying to play the blues, it really bugged me because people would say play with feeling, oh, it sounds real bluesy, that stuff. And those just sounded like little phrases that didn't really mean anything. How did I play that on the guitar? Well, it takes time, and you definitely know it when you hear it, but there are a few things that can get you started, a few techniques that are really just ingrained in the blues. Then once you start putting in your playing, you're just going to develop a more bluesy sound. And one thing right off the rip is this little blues bend that we did in our E7 lick. It's where we took this note, this D note here, and we bent it up, but we didn't really go anywhere with it. We just kind of pushed it slightly sharp. I didn't really bend all the way up to this note. That wouldn't have sounded too great, and I didn't reach the E. That would have sounded good, but I just put this little bend on it. Now I call it a little crop because it's what it sounds like to me. It's just like this slight lift in pitch. And when you start doing that in the right places, your playing is going to sound bluesy. So one other thing that I want to talk to you about that might help you sound a little more bluesy is a technique called slide-ins. And I actually uploaded my very first video to YouTube on this topic. It's a horrible video, but it's a great topic. It really is a technique that I use a lot in my playing, and we used it in the very first note to this example lick. We slid into this 11th fret on the 3rd string. So what's happening is I'm not really thinking about my starting point so much. I'm definitely thinking about my target fret here though, the 11th fret. And I'm just kind of focusing on that. And at some point, I've got my hand off the fretboard. At some point, I'm coming down and kind of landing real nice and easy. And you don't really hear the fret sliding along. That's not what you're looking for. You want to go from off the fretboard to the note really quickly, like that. To start off with, just go a few frets below and start with your finger on the string but not really doing anything, and then slide up. And as you slide up and move your hand in this direction, put pressure down on the string. At some point, you're going to make contact. And you're going to get that slurred sound that to me sounds really vocal. Now you don't have to just slide up like we did in the lick. You can also slide down into a note. We didn't feature that in this series of licks, but there's one I'll show you real quick because I use it all the time, especially when getting down into E. I'll do this little slide in, and it's happening from above, so I'm sliding down into the note. So you can do this both ways. It's a really handy technique, and it's something that's very small, very nuanced, and it might take you a little bit to get that that movement down, but once you do, you'll find it creeping into your playing a lot, and it will really help you develop that bluesy sound that we're looking for. Thanks for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it, and if you did, give me a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you back here next Tuesday for another acoustic blues lesson. Until then, play on.